Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I just want to say welcome to everyone. Welcome all to the second public meeting for Mecklenburg County's newest park. We had great attendance and participation in our first session, and we're looking forward to sharing the master plan process with you all today and workshopping with you on the vision for what this park will become. So before we get started, I'm going to pass it over to Bert Lynn for a little bit about the project team and introduction. So Bert, take it away.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us, whether you were able to join us back in June or if you've had a chance to visit one of our pop-up booth locations that we had in July, or visit our website on publicinput.com. My name is Bert Lynn. I'm the Capital Planning Division Director for Park and Recreation. With me today from the county are Brian Bennett, who's the project manager for this project, and Senior Planner Katie Lloyd. And joining us today are our lead consultants, Design Workshop. Emily, Adeline, and Yuri are joining us from that group. Our community engagement consultant, Jackie Turner from J. Turner Consulting, is on the line today, and we'll share some information with you shortly. Ted Duncan with Stewart, who's providing our landscape architecture support and civil engineering on the project, joins us, as well as Dean and Paul from C Design, who's serving as our project architects today. Next slide. So we've got a lot of information to share with you. We want to share first the summary of what we heard from you during our public outreach over the last 2 months, and then get into the fun stuff where we're going to look at a couple of design concepts and ask for some additional input based on those. So with that, I'll turn things over to Adeline.
Thanks, Bert. My name is Adeline Lerner. Again, I'm with Design Workshops Raleigh Studio. Before we get started and into the rest of today's content, I just want to start with a few housekeeping items. So we will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar, and participants are encouraged to submit any questions that they have through the Q&A box at the end of the session. And you can find the button for the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom settings toolbar. You can also raise your hand or chat to the panelists for any technical troubleshooting, and someone from our team can assist you during the meeting. The meeting is also being recorded, and it will also be posted on the project website so that you can forward it on, pass it along to your friends and neighbors, and also review it again after the presentation is over. So with that, we're very excited to speak with you all again about the process for creating a very new type of regional park to add to the Mecklenburg County Park family. Today's meeting lays the foundation for the master plan phase, which begins this month. As we move forward into the final phase of this project, it's important to note that a master plan is what is used to document the shared vision that we're creating for the park today, such that it is a successful and thoughtfully designed public space for years to come. So the vision will be refined and turned into a phasing strategy that is executable within a realistic time frame, process, and budget, and that Mecklenburg County can successfully operate and maintain, and that also creates a well-loved and well-used public park. The master plan will guide all phases of design development through the phase construction of site infrastructure and amenities. Since diving into the site analysis and context in the first public engagement session, we've held stakeholder meetings to work with the county and the towns on possibilities for this park. And as this is a large, fully canopied area in the county, maintaining the forest feel while also supporting the continued growth of the surrounding area and taking existing infrastructure planning, such as the Eastfield Road Small Area Plan and Huntersville Bikeway plans into account, will help this park serve the region in the long term. We also hosted outreach events and applied various engagement methods over the last 3 months, and we've heard overwhelming support and excitement for this project from you all, and you've helped affirm the programming and overall vision for what is on track to be a well-loved adventure park. So today we will present 2 design draft concepts and 2 different approaches to what adventure could mean on this site. So after this meeting, we will look to you again for your feedback over the next month in order to finalize a master plan that creates a shared vision and that lays that foundation for a new and unique park for the county. And with that, I will hand it over to Jackie Turner to brief you on the engagement process for this project so far and how it is helping to shape the design of the park.
Thank you, Adeline. And as you heard, Bert and Adeline both alluded to the engagement that's been done since those of you who joined us in June, what we've been doing since then. And so a lot of sort of smaller touches and outreaches. And so we want to share a little bit about what we heard. And some of the items, if it's too small to see, you could enlarge it later or look at it online, because we're going to speed through this. But you'll see that we received, each of the circles in the map represents the zip codes, the locations that we received input from. So it's fairly dispersed throughout the county, some outside of the county. And so that's a good thing, as many as in Central Charlotte as in the Huntersville area. And we wanted to hear from everyone for a regional park. Some of the specifics that that came about in the surveys or from the public input website and the surveys that you probably participated in, the results you can see online more specifically, but we wanted to highlight, how some of the ways that people said that they, what their preferences were. So in terms of accessing the park by sidewalk was what a preference was, but it was a tie second place between bike and car. And in terms of some of the features, overwhelmingly, it was nature, water, interactive elements, and sight lines and vistas. And I'm sure you probably have not had a chance to walk the site, but it is pretty spectacular. It has a bit of terrain. Of the 399 participants, before we closed the survey August 10th, people, talked again about the enjoyment of the outdoors, bicycling, hiking, walking, and things like preserving the canopy was very important, and keeping it natural, you can see, was a quote that was there. And then in the way that we would use the park, people would choose to use the park. The preferred use below, you can see the little hiker was the top way people want to use it. But then, and that's on the nature trails, but also bike facilities, a canopy walk, nature play. So a lot of it involves just keeping it natural. And this park would be a multi-generational space. People talked about a place for school-age children, those families, as well as seniors. And we heard a lot from dog owners in the community. Next slide. So these are just some images from some of the events that we held at the locations that are in the bottom. So when we say touch points or touches, it's ways that we engage the community where they may or may not have filled out a survey or participated in the survey, but we provided information to them. We provided a print survey and with the information so that they could go online. And so the results here in those surveys were maybe some of them are repeated in terms of the landscape elements, nature, interaction with water, and the views. But amenities that are important, people were pretty basic, restroom, shade, tables, something that we all like to see in our outdoor spaces. Next slide. And so when we were selecting focus groups, we came up with a list, and you can read more about, who was invited. And we prepared, sent out an invitation to the list, followed up with phone calls. And then we had, we settled into a couple of groups. And you'll see the groups that are on the right actually attended a 1 hour and 15-minute session where we had a few prompting questions and then just really allowed them to talk about what they wanted to see. And it was wonderful, because not only did we get some feedback that was similar to what you saw before, but we got information. Things that were repeated over and over again was environmental education and the learning experience. That was a sort of across the groups. Definitely conservation, preservation of the canopy. There were groups, we had like 100 Black Men of Charlotte talked about being able to use the space as an outdoor space, and also being able to have spaces where you didn't necessarily have to have an equipment to enjoy the recreation. A lot of people talked about promoting this new park, the ways that they'd like to see promoted. So it's always interesting how you get your information, how you find out about a new space. And one thing, we do talk a lot about the tree canopy, but we had a historian, a library historian that was part of the group. And one of the things that he said that this particular space, and I'll quote him, is it's a forest to farms to suburbs back to forest. So the forest you see was not the original forest. It's lived many lives, and that's sort of the succession of plant communities in North Carolina. And anyway, happy to answer more questions at the end, but I'll pass it back to Ellie.
Thanks, Jackie. So as Jackie mentioned, over the last 3 months, we've also sought feedback on the potential amenity menu that was presented during the first public information session. So the top choices from that menu, according to the feedback so far, and through August 10th, were the adventure course and low rope course, nature play, bicycle facilities, nature trails and interpretive trails, topping those out, and the canopy walk. And then choices ruled out for level of impact, site appropriateness, and maintenance were proper, built with equipment, playground areas, and primitive camping or glamping. So demographic analysis and outreach efforts in the last 3 months have also revealed some of the user types that are most likely to use and access these amenities, as you can see illustrated here. While the adventure park may naturally cater to nature lovers and active people and adventurers and explorers, it's also important to note that the park will serve a large community of people, so people with various ages and abilities and family structures. School groups and community groups will also find opportunities in the park for mentorship and education, which is something that we heard from our focus group discussions as well. And now that we've gone over a recap of the programming and outreach and an introduction of the potential site users, I'd like to orient you to the site and call out a few major considerations that will be factored into the design of the park. So very quickly here, some of you have seen this before, but situated on Eastfield Road in Huntersville, this site is home to upland forests with hardwoods. It's got a lot of rolling topography, and just walking sort of counterclockwise around the site, you pass some remnant pine stands from remnant agricultural and timbering practices. There's quite a bit of agricultural terracing and drainage, with the largest, but not very large, maybe 5 to 7 feet at most in width, ephemeral stream running through the center. There's the most biodiverse area on site is the northeastern portion of the site, and the terrain also gets the most extreme up there. So there's a really nice cliff walk that leads you to a valley of large beech and hardwood trees. And then coming back down on the less diverse northwestern portion of the site, you kind of follow along that utility easement to the remnants of an old agricultural homestead. There's not much left there. There's a chimney and some dilapidated buildings, but it's a nice, flat sort of opening on the site, and then back to the road. So it's very easy to, it's 115 acres. It's very easy to get out there and forget about all the growth around it and feel like you're really lost in the woods. In the first public session, we also covered which of the areas on site were best suited for structures and amenities based on the erosive soils, the quality of habitat, and the slopes. And there are many steep slopes on this site, as you can see here. This analysis, when overlaid, helps us to determine where the critical locations, such as siting of a main community facility, might be during the design of the park. And so that's represented as the green areas on this map on the right. And of course, structures like community facilities and canopy walks and amenities such as adventure courses require soil stability and careful planning for preservation of the biodiverse areas that will keep this park experience special. So when we look back on the suitable areas for building, it's clear that this site will provide ample opportunities for not just parking facilities and play areas, but that it will also provide a variety of interests through differing trail and amenity experiences across the park. And now that we're caught up on some of the nuances of the site's environment, we're on to the really fun stuff. So we'd like to present you today with 2 different visions for what an adventure park could represent and what it could look like on this site. So these 2 visions vary in their types of adventure, their level of activation, or intensity of amenities and their impact to the site. And the first concept approaches the adventure theme as more of a nature-based, explorative, and immersive experience. It will be a low impact scheme, so that means it will have less vehicular access and parking, fewer structures, and more passive amenities. The second concept ramps up a little bit more and defines the adventure experience as an action-packed, fitness-oriented, and providing multiple opportunities for play throughout the site. It will be a medium impact scheme with more vehicular access and parking, additional structures, and of course, more active amenities. And although there are common themes and amenities between each of these visions and these concepts, you will find that they also differ in their types of circulation, their levels of energy, and their destination offerings, and both still celebrate that the large canopied area of the site. So let's go ahead and start with concept A, Mec Wander. This concept is all about immersing oneself in nature, taking detours in the woods to play and explore, and celebrating the variety of habitat and natural and cultural history in and throughout the site's diverse tree canopy. Again, this scheme has less vehicular access and more centralized parking. It has fewer buildings and structures and more passive amenities such as nature trails that imply a more minimal site impact during the creation of this park. So we've also heard your concerns about respecting the privacy of the surrounding and future neighborhoods in the area. So one of the goals of site design for this project will be to preserve up to 100 feet of tree buffer around the edges of the site, as well as provide ample parking for the park's capacity. So for this, for Mec Wander, a central spine of nature-based amenities ties together all of the site experiences and celebrates the most biodiverse areas on the site, which you can see as represented in these darker areas underneath these activation zones. So everywhere that you see it's a little bit darker underneath these zones are the more biodiverse areas on site. And here's a vision of what that nature-based adventure experience could look like on site. We're going to zoom into each of these areas in just a bit, but I'd first like to walk you through some of the site access considerations for this concept. And this is also largely repeated in the next concept that you'll see as well. So you'll notice that there are potential thoroughfares and access points to the park with respect to the Eastfield Road Small Area Plan and Huntersville Bikeway Plan along the northern and western edges of the site. Additionally, pedestrian only and bicycle only entrances as planned by the development occurring around the site has been included, as well as main pedestrian and bicycle and the main vehicular entrance along Eastfield Road. In this concept, the main community hub or gathering area is more tucked into the woods at the location of the old homestead I mentioned earlier, providing more of a treehouse feel and the potential for exploration of the cultural and natural history of the site, as well as play in both the forest and the potential pollinator meadow environment located within the utility easement. The main event is that central spine I mentioned earlier. So it's an accessible canopy walk that circles the hub and then guides visitors into the heart of the site so that everyone can explore the variety of ecology within the site, from the remnant agricultural pine stands to those large beech trees in the creek and valley. The canopy walk also provides spurs to all of the surrounding site amenities, including picnic and gathering areas, detours for adventure obstacle trails in the woods, interpretive trails for wildlife viewing and birding, and multi-purpose trails. If this is to be a destination park that serves both the community and the region, accessibility obviously is critical. So that's why this concept includes that accessible canopy walk, as well as multi-purpose trails that connect to the potential future greenway to the north and all of the main gathering and amenity areas. So these trails are universally designed to accommodate everyone from a neighbor on their daily walk to commuters to visitors with various abilities and even sometimes occasional maintenance. So the passive nature and locations of trails in this concept also achieve an easier difficulty rating according to the National Park System scale. So this map on the right is just a brief look at how those accessible trails and those connections are developing in this concept. And you'll see also these vignettes of what these conditions might be. So again, concrete and or compacted aggregate and boardwalk, and really accommodating the user at various ability levels. So the primary circulation types for Mec Wander include those multi-purpose trails we just discussed for walking and even biking and occasional service. So those are much wider trails, more compacted, maybe aggregate and or earthen or concrete, depending on the areas that they serve, and about 3 miles of hiking trails and an earthen pump track. Now let's zoom into some of those major site destinations that I showed you earlier, as well as the amenities and circulation conditions. And we'll start with the hubs. So a main facility with a community treehouse feel is centered on the site of the old agricultural homestead. So this provides an entry point for where folks of all ages can stay and play or start to wander, either via that multi-purpose trail that circulates the site, or the boardwalk that takes you to the heart of the site, or hiking trails. And so the canopy walk provides a main route to all the amenities in the heart of the site, working with the terrain as a gentle boardwalk that gradually elevates you into the tree canopy. Here's a conceptual section of the hub of that area within the existing terrain, with the open play area, main facility, the canopy walk entry and multi-purpose trails, and nature that guide visitors through the pollinator meadow and into the woods. Further into the canopy walk is where the real magic happens. So this is the big idea, providing visitors with a view from the trees and into the trees, and occasionally giving points of interest through its overlooks and canopy lounge areas, as you can see depicted here, and even multi-level canopy play. And now I'm going to pass it over to Dean to briefly speak on the hubs and nodes of this scheme.
Sure, thanks, Adeline. So as far as the architecture goes, we're really breaking each of these options down into really 2 different categories for the architecture. So one would be the hubs, and that's really the larger event spaces. It's the community gathering centers, and those areas are meant to be multi-purpose. And then you have the smaller shelters or gathering or activity spaces, and what we're calling those are nodes. So that could be picnic shelters, it could be trailheads, it could be nature blinds, it could be a lot of different things that are along the different paths. Adeline, could you go to the previous slide? For the hubs, one thing to keep in mind is that the architecture for each of these concepts really changes and is meant to complement the overall use of the park. So for the first concept with Mec Wander, again, as a reminder, the idea is nature exploration and immersion. So this is more flexible spaces. It blurs the lines between indoor and outdoor spaces. And you have several overlooks and views to the outdoors. There's this idea of the tree house. So in the bottom right image, you're seeing this really built within the forest and really of the forest. So you're seeing that in the materials as well. For the nodes, it's again, similar concepts, but smaller scale. So we have this really cool idea that Adeline was mentioning about this canopy walk. So how can these smaller structures relate to that, be right off of that? And that could be an area for overlook. It could be a place to meet, to rest, to eat, to observe nature. The image on the right side in the middle is, a structure that could be at the trailhead to, really just watch nature, picnic up in the top right image, and nature blind in the bottom right image. So a lot of different options there.
Thanks, Dean. On the other side of the hub is the main circuit for the multi-purpose trails and pump tracks, providing gravel and mountain bikers of all skills of all skill levels, a way to experience the terrain and ecologies of the meadow and woods on two wheels, which is pretty fun. Oops. Sorry, there, my computer's. Additionally, radiating from the canopy walk and the accessible nodes on site are a variety of nature-based adventure experiences, including wildlife viewing trails and interpretive elements. We know that this is a big birding area. And trails with adventure play detours. So amenities such as nature play and exploratory obstacle courses are a great opportunity for reuse of materials from the site, potentially harvested during construction. And that wraps it up for concept A. And now we'll dive into the second concept, which invites visitors to gather in flexible porch-like areas throughout the site and to get fit in the forest, and to trek and play and choose your own adventure based on your skills and energy level. Again, this scheme has more vehicular access and decentralized parking for a forested entry experience. So more buildings, a few more structures, and more active amenities such as fitness and bike trails that imply more of an impact to the site during the creation of this park. So while it's important to preserve those high quality areas of habitat on site, you can see that the activation zones for this concept act as a circuit for adventure, for nature experience, for fitness, and for learning, and that a lot of the community destinations are centered sort of right up front on the site. And here's a vision of what that play and fitness adventure-based experience could look like on the site. So you'll notice it's a little bit more active looking than the last concept, and to minimize further impact to the potential impact to the site, the hub, the main parking and main infrastructure in this scheme are located much closer to Eastfield Road, not as tucked into the site, for more of an accessible community porch feel. So this concept caters to both the neighbors and the region by providing that upfront gathering hub and nodes, and including more local community-oriented amenities like a potential dog park, which we heard a lot of feedback on over the past couple of months, and desires for, located within the easement. Because vehicles have greater level of access to the site, this allows for a more formal adventure and low ropes course area or adventure park play area for all generations, as well as opportunities for fitness and team building and interaction with the site's vistas. So finally, this concept is also for all you mountain and cross-country bikers out there. It has more bike amenities than the previous scheme, and we'll dive into that in just a minute. So while the primary accessible circulation remains fairly similar to the previous concept, you can see in this one that again, the community has those opportunities for fitness loops right up front, and journeying through the woods right off the main hubs and nodes. So due to the increase in trail mileage and trail uses and user types, as well as skill levels needed to navigate the various trails throughout the site, some of these trails will more greatly vary in their difficulty and challenges to the user. The primary types of trails circulation in this scheme include, again, those multi-purpose trails for walking and occasional service, about 2.3 miles of hiking trails, so a little less than the other concept, and more narrow earthen fitness trail spurs for trail running, which we also heard a lot of desire for from the community, and more sort of challenging backcountry hiking experiences on the site. And as I mentioned earlier, this concept has a bike amenity circuit, which includes 1.2 miles of trail and a pump track with more exciting wood features and not just earthen. So the hub for this concept, again, is sort of located right up front. You can see in this scheme that the hub is centered on what we're calling a teaching forest and community fitness loop. So that's for everyone from their daily walk, again, to families, folks just learning how to get out there and use the adventure amenities, testing their skills, but also being introduced to the nature on the site. We also have a smaller boardwalk feature that circulates folks from the hub to the adventure play area, which we're calling the Porch Promenade. And this is just an accessible boardwalk, not quite as extreme as the canopy walk, but it leads you more into the woods and into the site beyond the busyness of the hub. And this is a section of what that looks like. So this is just a conceptual section of the terrain changes and how that teaching forest, those play areas, the hub and porch area, and that boardwalk to the adventure play area might feel when you hit that gathering point into the site and start to choose your own journey throughout the site. And now I'll pass it over to Dean again to talk about hubs and notes.
Sure. So again, the architecture needs to complement each concept. So Mec Trek is all about action, fitness, play. So what you're seeing here are really some more engaging elements that could be learning opportunities for all ages. You're seeing on the lower left-hand side some boulders actually built into the architecture. So some really cool opportunities there. But a big part of this is that front porch feel, that community gathering space where neighbors can get together, family, friends, classes, everything. And then accessibility is big for really all of these options. For the nodes, really, again, a big part of this is encouraging that activity. But in the bottom left-hand corner, really the architecture even takes a little bit of a backseat. So you're becoming a backdrop to this area for group exercise or group fitness. Could be yoga, could be a number of different things. And then the paths connecting structure, that's really, again, more of talking about that connection to whether it's the boardwalk or the porch promenade. It's just an area that really complements all the other amenities on the site. So you're seeing some that are more for event gathering up top, and then there's others that are really meant for viewing down below.
Thank you, Dean. So because this park will be like no other in the region, we're looking at the possibility of providing a unique type of bicycle facility in this concept that creates a diversity of options for bikers in the area and the county as a whole. So this is the northwestern portion of the site, and the terrain and features in this less diverse portion of the site provide exciting possibilities for bike amenities. And as you can see here, we are reserving this approximate location for this type of amenity so that if continued to be supported and desired by the public, we can develop partnerships with the mountain biking community in order to create high quality, easily maintained bike amenities. And so this condition we're calling the cross-country circuit. And these trails are separate from hiking trails, although some of the primary hiking trails do cross, and so we'll be sure to have safe crossings in this scheme at those points. But however, the biking and hiking is separate for your knowledge. And again, the pump track is a little bit more exciting and a little bit higher impact than the previous scheme with lots of meanders and wooden features. Again, there's a lot of opportunity for interaction with nature and for getting fit in the forest. So we have the primary hiking trail, which we're calling the Big Trek Trail for this scheme, is a much wider, more accessible trail, a little bit easier on the difficulty scale that circulates throughout the site And then there are little spurs, whether they are for trail running or that more backcountry hiking experience. Also opportunities still, we're not losing those opportunities for just true nature trails or interpretive trails throughout the site. There's also opportunities not just for fitness, but for play. As a trade-off with the canopy walk and to sort of keep that feeling, that porch feeling all throughout the site, we're proposing various flexible platforms. So these could be for picnics, for gathering, for yoga classes, fitness classes, and all of these are centered on this lovely cliff walk that leads you to, again, the heart of the site with big beech trees in a valley through some of the remnant pine timber stands, and also providing opportunities for nature play and interaction with water. So even though the stream on site is dry for most of the year and a little bit wet in the winter, there's still opportunities to learn about the historic drainage on site and for some dry creek bed play. And so you can see how all of these adventure amenities start to connect and sort of are adjacent to each other. So low ropes in an adventure course, again, is a little bit more formal in this scheme, a lot larger of an area. And this is really an opportunity for, just slightly more exciting features. You can still use reused materials from construction, but you can have sort of low rope netting, and everyone from families with small children to folks that are doing community groups that are doing team building could use this site and access it, as well as vehicular access to this area. And so here's a conceptual section of what that nature play and creek bed play and those terrace trails would look like in that sort of northwestern portion of the site going to the heart of the site. And so here's a summary. That's it for those two visions that we'll be looking for your feedback on. Again, we'll have a Q&A session just after this, but we also have some polling questions that we'd like to ask you. So again, these two concepts approach adventure in a different way. Mec Wander is nature and exploration based and immersive based, and it's our lower impact scheme. So fewer structures, more passive amenities, less vehicular access, versus Mec Trek, the one you just saw, which is action and fitness oriented, lots of opportunities for play throughout the site, as well as bike amenities. And it is a more medium impact, a little bit higher energy, higher activation, with more vehicular access and parking, more structures, and more active amenities. Here are those two side by side, along with the user types that they both support. So, and that doesn't mean that these user types are totally married to these areas, but just to give you a general idea of the activation of both of these, and who might be drawn to which area, whether it's adventure-based or nature-based. This is a little snapshot of the adjacencies of all of those amenities. And also of the hub location. So as you might remember, the hubs are in two very different locations. For Mec Wander, it's tucked into the site. Mec Trek, it's more upfront, more for that community feel with those local amenities. And here are the major destinations and adventure destinations on those sites. So for Mec Wander, again, the large canopy walk that brings you into the heart of the site, the community treehouse, which the hub radiates from, obstacles in the woods, lots of different interpretive trails and nature trail experiences, versus the second vision, which is Mec Trek, and that is the action and fitness, again, concept with the bike cross-country circuit, circuits for fitness and learning and play, the community porch and amenities right up front on the site, close to Eastfield Road, a larger adventure play area with the low ropes course and flexible platforms and porches all throughout the site. And so with that, in the remaining 8 minutes we have before the Q&A, Yuri, I'll ask you to put up the first polling question. You'll have a polling box pop up on your screen, and it will say question 1. So which draft master plan concept do you prefer for the new regional park? And you can choose one, and we'll give you about a minute or so to select one. I do encourage you, whether it's good feedback or bad feedback, to visit the project website. We'll give you the link at the end of this presentation. All feedback is valuable. And so we would just like to get your first reaction after seeing these two concepts today on this question, and give you about 5 more seconds. And Yuri, if you could reveal those results, please. We're excited to see them. Oh, wow. Well, it's pretty even. That's very interesting. Thank you all for your participation. I'm excited to hear your comments on the website. Again, whether good or bad, this is very helpful to see. Okay. Our next polling question, we have just one more after this. Our next polling question is based on the look and feel of the park's architecture. So Yuri, if you could put that question up, please. So which look do you prefer for the architecture in the new regional park? Again, you just choose one similar option. So those options for Mec Wander, it was the community treehouse feel, from which the hub and the canopy walk brought you into the heart of the site, experiencing different levels and ecosystems and ecologies on the site. You're more immersed in nature versus that Mec Trek community porch feel. So it's really the hub where you're meeting there and you're choosing your own journey from there. So it's more about places for learning, flexible spaces, and taking you out into the site based on your energy level. And so we'll give you a couple more seconds on this one. And Yuri, if you could reveal this one, please. Excellent. So it looks like most folks prefer the community treehouse scheme. That's very interesting to us and very exciting. I think, there's always going to be an option for the refined master plan for a hybrid of the best of both worlds from your feedback as well as from both of these visions. So thank you for your feedback on that. Our final question, Yuri, if you wouldn't mind putting that up, is again to just remind everyone that these are just visions that will guide the design of the park and the future creation of the park. So this question asks, which 2 elements are the most important for the first phase of the new regional park? And you can choose 2 on this question. So those options are the adventure course, the bike amenities, a canopy walk, the community facility, nature trails, fitness trails, play areas, platform shelters, or picnic areas. And so because there will be phased site development, this is really choosing what those destinations are for this first phase, what you want to see, what you need to have from this particular menu. Obviously, there will be more during the first phase. Okay, and just a couple more seconds. And Yuri, if you would reveal the answers for that, please. All right. Again, a lot of similar to all the feedback that we've been getting really for the past couple of months. Nature trails is huge for the region and for the community. And it looks like folks are excited about the canopy walk as well, which is great. And really all of the options look like, they all have been given fair play. So that's very helpful feedback, and we thank you all. And with that, I just want to talk a little bit about next steps before we get to Q&A. So in closing, our next steps are for that refined concept. So taking the best of both of these, looking at your feedback over the next month, and then defining sustainability goals as well for the plan moving forward, and for operations and maintenance considerations. From there, we'll also create a phasing plan and a master plan that will guide the rest of the park creation, if you will, over time. So in closing, we'd like to thank you again for your time today. Before we open the floor for questions, I encourage you to visit the publicinput.com site through this link, publicinput.com/Eastfield. And starting today, we'll have all new content, and we'll be posting a survey on the site, as well as more opportunities for you to leave feedback on the current design concepts. So all feedback is valued. We want to hear your reactions to these concepts and ideas. You can also access the project information and the recordings of this webinar through the new projects tab under the Mecklenburg County Park and Rec website, and be on the lookout for master planning process updates to the public input page, and feel free to share with your friends and neighbors. And now we'll open it up for any questions you may have. Again, feel free to type those in the Q&A box. I'm just going to run through some of the questions and MC them, and it's all the panelists will turn their videos on, please, and we'll have, I'll direct some questions to folks for the next 10 minutes. And Brian and Bert, if you all also see any questions you'd like to answer right up front before I get into reading these, just go for it.
Yeah, that sounds good. You've been going for a while, so I'll take some of the pressure off of you, and I'll maybe navigate this. So I'll start off. There's a question. This question is, love it. What are the traffic plans for Eastfield Road? More lights, widening the road, etc. How will this impact traffic on Highland Creek Parkway? And then it additionally says what type of safety features will be in place at the park. So in terms of traffic plans for Eastfield Road, right now we are obviously in the master planning, so we're trying to gather feedback on what type of amenities the public would like to see in the park. We will, as we move into design, development, and construction, we will be coordinating with North Carolina Department of Transportation, because Eastfield is a state road, as well as the town of Huntersville, to perform traffic study analysis in terms of what traffic impacts may be generated as part of the development of the park project, as well as understanding how developments that are occurring in the general area will be impacting the need for improvements along Eastfield Road. And we will be coordinating those again with NCDOT and the town of Huntersville to make sure that any improvements to Eastfield Road would be provided to allow ease of access in and out of the facility. In terms of safety features in place at the park, obviously user safety is a critical component of the design of all of Mecklenburg County Park and Rec facilities. So we will be making sure that the site itself is accessible. There'll be warning signs in terms of the type of activities that are and are not allowed within the park. As with all of our greenway facilities, we do encourage people, as you saw in the master plan, there's a lot of nature trails. And so we do encourage people to hike in groups, at least with another person. That's always advised for safety. When we build a facility like this, there's going to be, I would imagine on a facility of this size, there's going to be daily operations, park and rec operations, staff coming to and from the site to perform maintenance and just ensure that the safety and security of the site, as well as park rangers who will patrol the site on a I would say a regular basis, but it's not like at the same time all the time. You know, that doesn't really do a lot of good for deterring the activities that we don't want to see, but they do on a consistent basis patrol, as well as Park and Rec utilizes off-duty police officers to ensure the safety and security of sites. So there's a fairly robust system in place to ensure the safety and security of park users. Would anybody else on the panel like to elaborate on either of those points from that question?
I'll add a quick note there, Brian, in terms of signage and wayfinding on the site. You know, it serves really two good purposes. One, so you know where you are, so you can get back to your car or your neighborhood and don't get lost. The other would be if something were to occur, you know where you are within the park and you can relay that to emergency officials. And so that's something that we will work with first responders in identifying areas within the park and sharing those locations with them. So if something were to occur, they would know within the acreage of the park exactly where you are.
There's been a follow-up comment, and it's just a question asking if Eastfield will have a bike lane to allow bikers to get to and from the park safely. Again, that's not necessarily part of our project, but we will be coordinating both with NCDOT and the town. And if that is part of the overall Eastfield roadway improvements, I mean, something we would definitely like to see in terms of connectivity and allowing bike access to our park. So that's definitely something we will be studying again with the North Carolina Department of Transportation in the town as we look at the more detailed development of our project. The next question that I see is how many miles of mountain bike trails are in concept A and B? And so generally the both of them show approximately, I would say 0.15 miles of dedicated pump track, and that's in a closed loop circuit. The two plans show slightly different areas of what we would call kind of like a more of a mixed mountain bike or kind of a family biking trail. Adeline, can you advise the difference in the distances between those two?
Yeah, so for that lower activation, sort of more passive scheme, we have those either compacted aggregate, more accessible trails that total in about 2 to maybe 2.5 miles of trail for bikes to access in that scheme. And then, as Brian mentioned, about collectively about 1.5 miles of pump track in both. However, the pump track in Mec Wander, again, a little bit more passive. It's just an earthen trail. For Mec Trek, there are the pump track has really exciting wooden features, a little bit more higher impact, maybe a varying skill levels, and then it's got again some of those multi-purpose trails, but about 1.2, give or take, miles of those cross-country gravel or mountain biking trails. I also see a question about will there be fish ponds and or opportunities for fishing on site. And so when talking about preserving those high quality areas of habitat and respecting the current ephemeral streams and providing educational opportunities about the drainage on site, because it is largely remnant agricultural drainage from timbering. Unfortunately, the streams on site are dry most of the time, or the drainage is dry most of the time. It is wet in the winter. I think there will be plenty of opportunities for play, interaction with the water, crossing it through a variety of trails, but I'm not sure if folks would necessarily want to be fishing on this site or could catch anything in a dry creek bed for most of the year. But we have heard that desire a lot from feedback, and we are taking into account that folks really want to interact with water on site.
All right, I see the next question that's come in. It asks, will the nature center's buildings be LEED certified? And if not, why? The county does no longer pursues LEED certification for our buildings. We have done it on some previously. We no longer do. We don't pursue the actual certification process. Although on many projects, we do follow the LEED certification principles and point systems and use that as a target for both the design and the functionality of our buildings. So we do follow those processes and protocols as a target for our projects, but we would not actually seek the certification. The next question I see is, has funding been established for long-term structural and trail maintenance? The answer is yes. As this project would be constructed as part of the county's capital improvement project program, but along with all of our capital improvement projects does come general operational and maintenance funding that is in place to ensure the long-term function and well-being of all the facilities that are constructed. So, and I think to expand on that, we could, as part of this project, we would potentially be looking to partner with some of the groups in the area that we have partnered with on other facilities, such as, excuse me, the Tar Heel Trailblazers and potentially like the Carolina Thread Trail, some of their trail masters, who can both assist in providing kind of focus group and feedback as we work through the design of this facility to advise on, you know, trail lengths and features that are desirable for these user groups, and oftentimes are also instrumental in partnering for both construction and the maintenance of these facilities. So this is definitely something that we have discussed, and based on the final master plan and what's included in the initial phasing plan, we would be reaching out to these groups to identify people that we can work with. A lot of these people are already identified based on previous partnerships that we have, but who we can work with to facilitate the design and implementation of these trails. Moving on to the next question, I see, has a disc golf course been discussed as an amenity? And I can say, yes, it has. We discussed it early on when we were looking at the original program elements. And while it has continuously come up as a possible, for possible inclusion as a program element, it seemed that based on public input that we had gathered to date, that other amenities were more desirable for use at this park. And in our study, you know, looking at what's in the area, there's obviously a tremendous number of disc golf courses in the area within Mecklenburg County. There's at least 5 or 6 that are within 5 miles of this site. And so it was determined that, at least where we stand right now, that providing some of these other amenities that aren't as fully built out within the system to date were possibly a more appropriate more appropriate program elements to look at for master planning this project. The next question is, do either or both of these plans include permanent staffing of environmental educators, adventure leaders for regular programming? Again, this is something that we have discussed, and it really is based on the actual program that is implemented on this, especially this initial phase. if there were elements like, for example, a high ropes course or something similar to what they have at the Whitewater Center, obviously full-time staff for programming as well as safety would be required. If there's also been the discussion of if elements like this aren't incorporated into the initial phase of construction, there is the opportunity to utilize existing staff both in our Park and Rec as well as the Natural Resources group to basically create remote events where staff would come out on for specific engagement opportunities and have like a walk through the woods or a bird identification, plant identification. So that is definitely something that we're studying in the program, and whether or not it would be permanently hosted on this site, especially in the phase 1 development, is to be determined, but very likely at full build out, there could be an opportunity to have permanent staffing that would meet some of these needs. And if it's not permanent staffing, it could, again, just be a facility that could accommodate our existing staffing coming out on a program by program basis. The next question I see here, this is a doozy. Is there any major cost difference between the concepts? I would say yes, there would be significant cost differences. However, it may not be, the overall cost may not vary. It's just going to depend on the mix of program elements that we're looking at. As part of this study, the consultant will be preparing an order of magnitude cost estimate for the entire master plan build out. And I want to, I guess, make clear that obviously what we're showing in the master plan is a long-term vision for what this facility can be. And we're trying to include the feedback from the community on what the community wants to see it be. However, there is a phase 1 budget that we will be constrained to construct within. And so no matter which, well, when we take these 2 master plans and with public feedback, distill them into a single plan, we will then identify what elements are most appropriate for development in phase 1. And that's what will be constructed initially. And as we stand right now, we have a $5 million budget for the phase 1. And that includes all hard costs, which would be the actual construction costs, as well as soft costs, which are consultant design fees, permitting fees, regulatory review fees, all of that. So that is the budget that we're working within, and we'll be using currently, as it stands, that $5 million budget is what we will be using to identify what is the phase 1 component of the master plan. The next question I see, are we running long? Do I need to burn through these, or?
We are about 5 minutes over. Brian, I was going to say, we also are recording these questions so we can post them on the project website with answers. But if you'd like to answer more, feel free. I'll toss it back to you and Bert for closing and however you want to end it.
Brian, the one question that I did see occur a few times in there was in terms of timing of construction and development completion of the park.
So timing right now, we estimate we're about 3 months from having a final master plan that is approved. The master plan will be designed faster than that. Then we will, once we have an approved master plan, we will engage the consultant to move into full DD and construction documents, which I anticipate taking about 12 months to get the full design documentation and permitting, at which point we would put the project out to bid. And then Anticipate probably a 12 to 18 month construction period. So all that being said, best case scenario, perfect world, we'd be looking at about 3 years before we actually would have a a ribbon cutting to open the first phase of this project.
Yeah, and I think once we are able to complete the master plan and share that this fall, we'll make sure to have a high level schedule that's associated with that as well. So I wanted to thank everybody for coming. As Adeline mentioned earlier, we'll answer the questions we weren't able to get to. I know there was some more about coordination with the nearby neighborhoods. That's something that most likely will happen as we start to move from the master plan into the phase 1 design, and have some direct conversations with the neighborhoods there based on what the program of that first phase is going to be. We have a second meeting tonight. It's going to be the same program, the same presentation as the meeting now. So if you have any friends or neighbors or family members who weren't able to attend now, we'll be doing this at 6 o'clock as well. And if they're not available today, not a problem. You can go to publicinput.com/Eastfield. We'll have these videos posted. The poll questions that we asked will be live on the website through September 10th. And then something that I was actually able to check out today, we've got wildlife cameras posted across the entire site. And some of the photos that we've been able to take so far of what we found on site are available to look at on the website there. So for further countywide information, you can go to our website, mecnc.gov/parkandrec or parkandrec.com. We'll get you there as well. And then we're looking forward to gathering your feedback over the next 2 or 3 weeks and pulling that together in the master plan reveal later this fall. With that, from Mecklenburg County, thank you all for attending. Adeline, I don't know if you had any further words you'd like to share.
Nope. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Mecklenburg County. We're excited about this project and excited to speak with you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.